Hey guys, it's Mrs. Invest. I just quickly want to say I'm really sorry that I missed last week's video. I hate to do that, but last week I got my second COVID vaccine and it really worked. I was down for the count. I had the fever, the body aches, the chills, the whole thing. It was all good stuff. You know, the vaccine was working, but I was just out of operation. So sorry about that, but I am back. I'm healthy, I'm feeling good. And today I want to talk about what most people want to talk about right when they get out of a bad flu, compounding returns. But no, seriously, today I want to talk about the power of compounding and how compound growth is essential to your investment portfolio and how it can make a bigger difference than you could even imagine when you look back on your portfolio over whatever time frame, 10, 20 years. And when it comes to compounding, I think there are three basic essential things to really understand. The first one is that assets make money on their own, or they make you money on their own, for the most part, depending on the asset. But you know, we've grown up in this society that I guess it has a lot to do with capitalism, where it's all about the grind, right? Like you put in more hours, work harder, work more, 9 to 5 grind, you know, work equals making money. And this is definitely true, but also when it comes to compounding your returns, it's very difficult. It's almost impossible to compound your time. There's only so many hours a day, no matter how hard you work. But assets can compound for you because they don't require your direct time input in order to grow. So that's the first thing, is assets make you money by themselves without you having to do much of anything. The second thing, and this one's pretty simple, it's pretty easy to understand, the more assets you have, the more money that they make you. This is pretty basic, but I think it's also an essential piece to compounding returns. And the third piece, which is the most important, but I think also maybe the part that people's understanding drops off a little bit, is that the higher the growth rate of your investments, the exponentially faster your money will grow over time. And the word exponential there is super important. So it's not just that the higher the growth rate, the faster your investments grow over time, but they grow exponentially faster. Our brains are not wired to understand exponential growth. It's hard for us to perceive, to imagine in our heads an exponential situation. So because it's almost impossible for us to do that, we generally just don't think about it because it's too complicated. And a way I can explain this is that, you know, if I said, you're gonna go walk 100 meters and each of your steps is 1 meter long, how many steps would you have to take to reach that 100-meter mark? Most people, even if you had very poor mathematical skills, could quickly in their head imagine the length of that situation and quickly do the mathematical calculation that if each step is 1 meter and you're going 100 meters, it's gonna be 100 steps. That's linear thinking. It's how our brains operate. We live in a linear world, and that's how we like to think. But imagine a similar situation where I say, you're gonna take those same 100 steps, but the first step is gonna start with the same 1 meter, but every step thereafter is going to be double the previous step. So that means your first step is 1 meter long, your second step is 2 meters long. Now I know this is like improbable because your legs are the same length, but like just bear with me here. The step after that is 4 meters and 8 meters. How far would you have traveled after those same 100 steps? Now, unless you have a calculator and you're good with exponents, this is something that's almost impossible for you to mentally picture. Like, try and mentally picture how far that distance is. Like, you just can't do it. We're just not capable of computing that in our head. Our brains just don't work that way. So the actual distance is 1.27 times 10 to the 27th exponent, which is like ridiculously long. Like, you might have been like, oh, it's probably gonna be pretty far, but like, were you really thinking 10 to the 27th exponent? Like, it's ridiculous, right? And just for reference, like fun fact, the diameter of the observable universe is like something like 9 to the times 10 to the 23rd exponent, like the universe, like not the world, like the entire solar system. So it's like ridiculous, right? And so this is a reason why I think it's so important to truly try to understand the importance of compounding investments. And especially if you're a beginner, when you have like literally nothing when you're starting out. I started my investment portfolio with $300 from babysitting. Like, I literally didn't even have $1,000. And when you're starting there, you're just like, oh my God, like, how do people make millions? Like, how do you do it? How do you it's the same thing as like, you cannot understand how somebody can get there at a young age because we just cannot understand exponential growth. It doesn't make any sense. But if you at least try to understand it and watch this video through, it can kind of motivate you to show you that it is possible. And once your money starts working for you, things start to snowball and happen really quickly thanks to the compounding effect. So before we talk about what compounding is exactly, let's first talk about what compounding is not. So this is called simple interest, and this is similar to that linear example of each step being 100 meters. It's very easy for us to understand, but you also don't travel that far. You only travel 100 meters. So it would be kind of like if you put your money into, let's say you had $10,000 and you put it into a 3-year GIC to get 3%. So at the end of 3 years, the bank will give you back your $10,000 and you will be given an extra $300, which is the 3% of the 10,000. So you'll be given $10,300 at maturity of that GIC. So what's happened here is you've earned a percentage return on only the money that you put in. So you didn't earn any extra additional money off of that $300 interest. And the very essence of simple interest is that you don't make money off the money that your money makes you. God, that's like so complicated. But let me just say it again. You don't make money off the money your money makes you. You only make money off of the money that you put in. And so as you can expect, you're not going to get the greatest returns this way because you are basically getting no compounding effect whatsoever. Every dollar, the only money that is growing is your own hard-earned money that you've put in, which if you've watched my other videos, you know is not the most efficient way of earning money. And if you see this chart here as well, it shows you how simple interest is quite a linear situation. The line is straight. And what we're going to talk about in a second, which is compounded returns, those start to curve up over time. So the graph starts to go exponential, and that's what you really want when you're thinking about long-term investments and retiring early. So compound interest now is where you start earning money, not only of the money that you put in, that initial $10,000, but you start earning money off the money that your money makes you. So off that $300 from the previous example. And the very essence, the very basic example of compound interest would be a savings account. So let's say again, you put in $10,000 and you're making 3%. Good luck finding a savings account that gives you 3%, but we're just going to carry on with the same example. So at the end of the year, you'd have $10,300. But next year, you will be earning interest on not only the $10,000, but on that $10,300. So the next year, you won't be getting just $300, you'll be getting $309. The problem with savings accounts is that the interest rates are so low that the compounding effect is almost negligible. Have a look at some of these Canadian banks savings accounts, what they're offering. So first, here's CIBC. They're offering 0.05%. Now this isn't 0.05, this is 0.05%. So if you're multiplying, it's like 0.0005. It's so low. And I think RBC right now, they're offering like a promotional 1.5, which like fine, I guess. But then, you know, they knock you back to 0.05%. The same thing as CIBC once you're, I don't know whenever the promotion ends. TDs is hysterical. Like, I don't get it. So if you don't even have $5,000 in the account, they give you zero, they give you nothing. And just to show you how much nothing they give you, they've gone to 3 decimal places of nothing. They're like, just so you know, we are really giving you nothing if you don't have $5,000, 0.000. Like, what? I don't get it. And then it doesn't matter if they don't want you if you have nothing. And then if you have $250,000 in the account, you still only get 0.05%. Like, it's literally nothing. So although technically it's compound interest, if the rate, remember the third step I talked about at the beginning, the higher the growth rate, the faster, the exponentially faster your investments compound. If the growth rate is so low, so close to zero, like 0.05, I mean, come on, it makes compounding almost negligible. Like the only time I want to be seeing 0.05 in anything to do with my investments is the management fee on my ETFs. That's literally the only time I will accept anything 0.05. So this brings brings me back to my third point that I made at the beginning of the video about having a high growth rate. What you really need are compounding returns in conjunction with a high growth rate. And this is really what gives your investments exponential growth potential and what you really want and need from your investment portfolio. And the way that you get a higher growth rate is you just very simply invest in assets that generate higher returns, like stocks, ETFs, and maybe real estate, depending on where you live. A small increase in the growth rate of your investments can give you a huge increase in the value of your investments given a long enough period of time. And it comes back to that exponential thing and how we're pretty poor at understanding that. So let's say you start out with $30,000 for your initial investment. You contribute $1,000 a month and the interest rate is 10%. Now, I don't think 10% is super unrealistic considering most passive ETFs are somewhere in and around that ballpark pretty much within the last 10 years. And let's give that 20 years to grow and compound the interest monthly. So at the end of 20 years, you'll have just shy of $1 million, with more than 709,000 of that, almost $1 million, is money that you didn't actually put in. So that's pretty impressive. Now, let's slightly tweak the scenario and go the same $30,000 initial investment, same $1,000 a month, but now let's say the interest rate is 15%. And let's grow that over 20 years as well. So now all of a sudden we have more than doubled the investment from just shy of $1 million to now just over $2 million. And our interest earned is $1.8 million. Like, that is almost unbelievable until you actually plug the numbers in and do it yourself. And you might say, well, you know, that's very nice, but how do you increase from a 10 to 15% growth rate on your investments? Well, you know, let's say, imagine you're in a mutual fund and you exit that mutual fund, that's 2.5% right there, and you didn't have to do anything at all. And this is one of the reasons why I really think the mutual fund is dead. I think it's dying because the fees are so high. They're like 2.25 to 2.5%, like super high. And you know, if you just walked into the bank and like knew nothing, you might look at that and be like, oh, 2%, like 2 out of 100, that's not bad at all. But when you really get into it and do the math, you see how a 2.5% loss in returns compounded over 20 years can literally add up to hundreds of thousands of dollars. So what you're looking for, the golden goose, is high growth rate plus compounding returns and low fees. That is really the best case scenario for an investment portfolio over the long term. And I hope with this video that I made the concept a little bit clearer. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.